So we only got through 2 paragraphs yesterday, so I think I'll reread them so we remember where we were and then continue on. So this is from an article in the New York Times a few months ago called The Enduring Hunt for Personal Value. So he started, why does Michael Phelps keep returning to a brutal training regime in the pool long after he has achieved every imaginable accolade as a swimmer? Why do men who have earned hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions, work relentlessly to earn even more long after it could possibly make any material difference in their life? They're good questions. Why does a substantial group of politicians with no remote chance of being elected president feel compelled to traverse the country campaigning 18 hours a day for more than 2 years? Okay. So as little as these varied people have in common, their shared core hunger is for value. So that's the thing. Once our basic needs are met, we human beings arguably crave value above all else. So we want meaning in our lives. We want to be valued as human beings. Sometimes we think being valued by others is the meaning of our life. That's where we get quite confused. Okay, when we think that other people, valuing us makes our life meaningful in the long term from a Buddhist perspective. In a short term, from a worldly perspective, yes, but in the long, from a Buddhist perspective, no. And even, as he mentioned here, even from a worldly perspective, what's Michael Phelps getting out of doing this more and more? Okay. So we each desperately want to matter, to feel a sense of worthiness. In a 2008 analysis of more than 200 studies, the highest rises in the subject's level of cortisol, which is a hormone released into the body in response to stress. So the highest rises were prompted by what researchers summed up as threats to one's social self, or threat to one's social acceptance, esteem, and status. So what does that mean? It means we want everybody to like us. Nobody's allowed not to like us. We want everybody to regard us highly. We want to be well known. We want praise, esteem, status, acceptance. And when we don't get that, then a lot of stress. Okay? So this is a big motivator for us. This is also why, they say the masters say that when you go on retreat, overcoming attachment to food is easy. Overcoming attachment to reputation, even if you're meditating in a hermitage, not around other people, that is much more difficult. So 8 worldly concerns again here. In his book, Violence, Reflections on a National Epidemic, James Gilligan recounts the story of visiting with an inmate who was out of control. The man was in solitary confinement 24 hours a day and attacked his guards whenever he was approached. "What do you want so badly?" Gilligan asked the inmate, "that you were willing to give up nearly everything to get it?" In other words, why are you acting? What are you trying to get out of this behavior? Ordinarily so inarticulate that he could barely be understood, the inmate didn't hesitate in his reply. "Pride, dignity, self-esteem," he said. "If you ain't got pride, you ain't got nothing." Okay, so this is, wanting to be valued, to have your own sense of your own dignity, your own self-esteem. And how do we get this normally as samsaric beings? From other people and other people's response to us. Yeah. And so, from a psychological view, that's normal, that's natural. From a Buddhist view, it's something that we're going to have to go beyond craving for. Yeah, because you've never heard of a Buddha who says, I want pride, dignity, self-esteem, reputation, fame, praise. Okay? So you can really see here the difference between worldly aspirations and worldly goals and Dharma aspirations and goals. We're really going against the grain, so to speak. Over 40 years of studying violence, Gilligan was struck by the frequency with which I received the same answer when I asked prisoners or mental patients why they assaulted or even killed someone. Time after time they would reply, because he disrespected me. And this is what I find in working with inmates, people so sensitive to what they see as being disrespectful, being shunned, being left out, being thought of as stupid, whatever. So super sensitive, probably because as children they were not as acknowledged, or they were scolded when they didn't even do anything wrong, or ignored, or who knows what else. But this is not the domain of just people who were imprisoned. It's just, I can see it more vividly there, but it pertains to all of us. Okay? And, we all want to be respected and valued and seen as worthwhile. So again, independence on other people. And so that often leads us to this thing I talk about a lot, that we do what we think other people think we should do. Yeah, so we want to do what we think society tells us to do, what the people that we value, we want to do what we think they think we should do, and so that we can get respect and value and feel like we're worthy individuals. Okay, in Buddhism, we're instructed to learn how to value ourselves, because we have the Buddha nature, because we have a precious human life. Okay? And to learn to value ourselves because we have a good motivation, because we're acting in virtue, not because other people praise us because we've done something good. Okay? So the need for value and so on is there, but the way of getting it is different in Buddhism, and we also want in the Dharma to stop this kind of clinging to worldly value. Okay, so we're seeking value, but a different kind of value, and we're taught different ways to get that kind of value. Getting what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay, and another sociologist characterizes what he calls the code of the streets. Respect is viewed as an entity that is hard won but easily lost, so must constantly be guarded. Okay, so you see that in prisons, people really guarding their respect, and I have to fight and look a certain way to get it, and if I'm not on guard all the time, somebody could disrespect me. If I don't stand up for myself, then everybody's going to disrespect me. So like I said, it's obvious in that setting, but the rest of us do this too. Okay? I mean, what happens the minute that somebody points out a fault to us? Just a simple thing, you know. You left the faucet running while you were brushing your teeth. Do we say, thank you so much for pointing it out?
Justify it.
We justify it. We get defensive immediately because it feels like the person is disrespecting us. Or that's the way we interpret it. They're disrespecting me by noticing that I left the water on when I'm brushing the teeth. You know? So we get defensive, we justify it somehow to keep so that we look good, or at least so we don't look bad. How different is it to tenaciously seek and accumulate wealth as a source of value? In these cases, what's so easily lost is not the wealth itself, but any enduring sense of value it provides for its accumulators. Okay, so some people, for them, accumulating wealth is what gives value and meaning to their lives. Maybe that's what their parents used as a credential for success. So they, they want their parents' approval, they accumulate wealth, or your social group or society in general, assumes if you're wealthy that, you're a good person, you're valued, blah, blah. Okay? And so when the wealth is lost, like when the stock market crashes or things go down or whatever, it's not the loss of the wealth so much as it is the loss of status and feeling of value. So I remember in 2008 reading that one man he was somewhere, I think in Volkswagen, business, some upper executive in Germany, and he committed suicide. Yeah, when the recession happened, because he lost money and he felt like he wasn't worthwhile anymore. Yeah. This is interesting. It's also this is probably also the reason why one of the highest suicide rates happens with men who are older than 65, because they spent their whole life finding value in their work. They retire, and then, who am I? And so then Tony Schwartz, he's the guy who's writing it, who was Donnie's ghostwriter for The Art of Making a Deal. He says, in my own relatively small way, I learned this lesson at an early age. Nearly 3 decades ago, at the age of 35, I wrote a book with Donald Trump called The Art of the Deal. It became a #1 bestseller, and I earned more money in a short time than I had in all the rest of my working life. The book's success provided a welcome relief from financial anxiety and gave me greater material well-being, but it did not fuel any enduring sense of value. Yeah? So for him, the money wasn't so connected with a sense of value. Yeah. To the contrary, the fact that so much external success didn't deliver what I had always imagined it would left me feeling empty and bewildered. What it did prompt was a search for a more sustainable source of value that has continued for the rest of my life. Yeah, so this goes back to the thing about Phelps and the politicians and so on, is you accomplish what you think it is that is going to give you a sense of value. And since it's an external thing that comes and goes, then it still doesn't fill the empty hole inside. There is little doubt that we each need the basic source of value that money can provide. By giving us the ability to meet our basic needs, it frees us from being preoccupied by them. But then we are seeking value. Yeah? And how are we going to get value? The problem is that we can so easily be seduced into believing that generating more external value, whether in the form of wealth, status, or even achievement, leads to a greater sense of internal value. Okay, so looking outside for the 8 worldly concerns is going to give us a feeling of being good human beings and valuable human beings. It's not going to work, but we're tricked into believing this. Each of these, pursued as a means to ensure our value, delivers diminishing returns over time. Any single-minded pursuit, unmoored to a deeper purpose, has the potential to take on the characteristics of an addiction. Yeah? Workaholics. Okay? Or helicopter parents. You know, what gave you value, now it's an addiction. You're in your helicopter all the time. Okay? More and more is required to obtain the same high, and the compulsion of the pursuit prompts a growing sense of the despair and unworthiness it is meant to solve. In other words, you get the American dream in whatever form it is you want it, and you still aren't going to be eternally happy. My search for the deepest source of value is not over, because the journey is lifelong. But one simple principle does seem increasingly evident. We derive the greatest value not by seeking to build a better case for ourselves. Instead, we do so by understanding better what we value most, meaning what we stand for most deeply, and who we really want to be. So what he's saying, what really is of value is, what are our values and principles? What kind of human being do we want to be? Okay? Then we use that conviction and those skills in the service of others. We feel best about ourselves when we stop focusing obsessively on filling our own sense of deficit. Making others feel more valued makes us feel more valuable. So working for the benefit of other living beings fulfills our own need to feel like our life is valued and has significance. Interesting how he came around to that at the end.
You're saying the same book brought different conclusions to the people who read the book. I mean, I see 2 different conclusions. His conclusion after writing the book and Donald's conclusion.
Yeah. Well, his conclusion took many years after that to form, because his immediate thing was, wow, I got it, and then boom, this isn't it. I still feel empty. And then thinking, what is it that really makes me feel good about my life? And coming to the conclusion that doing something for others, with a good intention, not with the intention to manipulate, is what gives meaning. Yeah. Because I think he's quite aware of, pleasing others with the intention to manipulate after writing that book. And he's realizing that that's not going to work for him anymore. Yeah. And it doesn't work for anybody, really. I mean, this can be why we see over and over and over again. I mean, he's such a good example, always has to be the limelight. Yeah, my favorite presidential candidate. Always has to be the limelight. Why? Because getting what he had yesterday didn't satisfy him. It wasn't enough. People roaring and shouting his name and telling him it was wonderful. He still feels like there's this huge, gigantic hole inside of him. And so, like an addict, more and better, more and better. And we each do this in our own way. Yeah. So we're like the mice pecking on the thing, thinking next time the rice grain that comes is going to be the one that makes us eternally happy. Okay, and we miss out on the benefit that comes from developing ourselves internally to become the kind of people we want to be, and then using that to be of benefit for other living beings.